and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we look at a brand new film directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, Abattoir. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the Alex Van Helsing series from HarperCollins. With me from Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello.
Howdy.
Howdy. And
I
also,
have to say, I always have to say howdy when Tony's not around because it's my first instinct to say howdy, but I don't want to do it
then Tony
after
takes
he
it.
does it. Yeah.
yeah, Tony does routinely say howdy. You know, Tony, who is like the least Texan that I know, nevertheless has branded howdy, for me anyway. All right. And also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration, your friend in immigration. Say hello.
Hello.
According to Wikipedia, Abattoir is a 2016 American horror film directed by Darren Lynn Bousman and written by Christopher Monfett, based on the comic book miniseries that premiered on June 7, 2016 at the Los Angeles Film Festival, and it has its wider premiere this week, December 9th, 2016. And we are going to talk about it because we've had the pleasure, I suppose it's a nice little privilege to get a chance to look at it before it comes out. So I want to get our opening thoughts, and why don't we go, last week we started with Drew, so let's start with Julia, then Drew, and then I'll go. Opening thoughts, Abattoir.
Abattoir is interesting. There were some things I really liked about it, and some things that I thought could have been different, better, whatever. So what I liked about it is that I thought that the concept, which is basically that horrible murders happen, and then the rooms that they happen in are stolen by this one guy. Like, he literally takes the walls and the furniture out of the room. And then they go away. And so the question is, where do they go? And that whole thing, that whole story, the whole business of the rooms and the where they go and what happens to them, which we'll get into, I thought was really interesting. I thought there was some really neat special effects and some neat spooky things. As usual, I'm not a big fan of gore, so it was a little bit more gory than I would have liked, but it could have been worse. And then just some of the dialogue kind of didn't sit right with me, and there was a couple of things about like how I don't know. I kind of felt like there were some things that were disjointed about the story. So it was kind of so I enjoyed seeing it, and I thought there were some really cool things about it. But there was a couple things that I was a little critical of.
All right, outstanding, Mr. Drew. What say you?
Well, I have to say, when you first told me that we were going to be doing this movie and it was a haunted house movie, I was a little concerned because even though I do actually really like haunted house movies when they're done well, I hate bad haunted house movies. I hate them. I hate them more than any other kind of horror film. It makes me want to punch my television set. So I was very pleased to see that this was such a clever B movie. It was more of a combination of a mystery film with the haunted house genre, and the way it was put together was just very, very, very clever. And the concept, as Julia brought up, is this is sort of like the Howard Hawks version of The Shining. That's my best description of it, and I was really pleasantly surprised by how much I liked this movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's not flawless, some of which that we will get more into as we go along. I thought it could have been a lot scarier, but it's not unfrightening, and it's very, very entertaining. So I love a good mystery almost as much as I love a good horror film, and I like the fact that this movie kind of dabbled in both genres. So very entertaining, and thank you for bringing this film to us, Jason.
Oh, absolutely. I'm pleased that Momentum brought it to us. So one thing I really agree with you about this, Joya was saying there's a really amazing concept that's the pitch. The elevator pitch in the trailer is some crazy person is removing the crime, is buying houses and removing the crime scenes from them. That is an insane hook. But you're right, from a structural point of view, it is very cool that this movie basically is a haunted house film, but we've seen a lot of haunted house movies, and they always are an expedition. Haunted house movies, at their heart, are expedition films. Somebody is putting together an expedition, and they're going to go into a haunted house in the same way that somebody climbs Mount Everest, and it's even said that way in the Legend of Hell House. They say, oh, it's the Everest of haunted houses, and they're even throwing down 8x10 glossies of each of the people and explaining them, or sometimes it's a slideshow or whatever. That's a haunted house movie. This is not that. This is actually a murder mystery that ends up becoming a haunted house movie, and that is clever. I mean, I have to admit, and the thing that I wanted to start, the first point of discussion that I wanted to bring up, actually, is that odd genre twisting thing, because one of the things that Joy and I found so strange, or Joy, I don't want to speak for you, but you were talking about dialogue. So this movie begins with a whole after an initial sort of opening monologue that's hard to understand until you get to the end of the movie, which is on purpose. Mysterious opening monologue from somebody cutting out newspaper clippings. We open with girl reporter in her at her newspaper offices, and it literally plays like His Girl Friday. You can't tell at first glance when exactly this movie is supposed to take place. Julia, did you observe that, right?
Right, and so for me, that was a little jarring because I kind of felt like, oh, so this movie takes place in the 40s, because everybody was it was very film noirish, and she's got this whole Lois Lane, kind of thing. Actually, she's got not even Lois Lane. It's more of a, yeah, like, I mean, like, what is it, Dick? What's the private detective that Jean-Luc Picard plays?
Oh, well, Dixon Hill, but he was
Dixon
supposed
Hill
to
is like
be
that
Philip
kind of
Marlowe.
thing where they're making fun of. Anyway, yeah, so she's got the super dark red lipstick, and the hair is kind of done in this 40s. Actually, she looks like Agent Carter. That's who she looks like. And
Yes.
so I'm just like, why? Because she looks that way, and then her boyfriend, or the detective guy, that's ex-boyfriend, I guess he is. He kind of has this, newsy kind of hat or something, or no, maybe it was a fedora, I can't remember. But anyway, some kind of old-fashioned hat and a leather jacket. I was just kind of trying to figure out what time this was in, because then they walked by some computers, so I didn't get that at all.
Okay, first of all, I loved that. First of all, that it played with your concept of what time period this was taking place in for a moment. I thought that was really some really great production design right there, and the way they slowly revealed that this was actually contemporary. But like, you have to consider the world I live in, where I'm part of the rockabilly scene, and I know people in the swing scene.
Yeah.
It is not weird for me to see people dressed like this on a day-to-day basis, and in fact, my own wife dresses like that.
She does. She'll wear that 1940s sort of little twirl on her forehead in exactly that way.
Yeah, and like that bright red lipstick is like practically a Jamie Barr signature.
Right.
So
sure.
I loved the fact that they had a character that was into vintage culture, and it wasn't treated as like a camp or like sort of something that was super kooky. It was just like part of her character. And like when we saw her apartment, where she had the old television set with like the flat screen set up on top of that reminded me of like so many friends that I've had over the point of my life.
That's a really good point.
It made her more multidimensional to me, because I related to that instantly.
Well, I was just thinking that what it means is that the art director here, and maybe this is based on the graphic novel that this is based on, who knows, but the art director involved here had some freedom to create dimensionality for the character that isn't necessarily in anything the character says. It's just, but it's
But she
definitely in
does
what's
say
going.
at one point she loves that she loves old things and that she loves vintage things. Like
Well,
she does
and her
actually have a line
boss,
about it.
and by the way, Tim Burton also did this in Batman. Batman, if you watch the 1989 Batman, it is really difficult to tell what planet Gotham City is on because their 1989 looks an awful lot like 1949. It is very difficult, except that people have cell phones and DVD players and stuff like that.
Well,
But
not that because it was 1989, but
yeah. Not DVD, CDs. They had CD players, and because I remember Batman stores some sound on a rewrite CD, but you're right, no DVD. But anyway, they had lots of personal technology and computers and stuff like that. But nevertheless, it definitely looked like the 40s. So that's going on here, and that is really interesting. The other thing that's going on in the script itself, and is that they've made a deliberate choice, at least early on in this film, before we get to the haunted house sequence, that it sounds like snappy Thin Man kind of patter. So much so that even the boss man at the newspaper calls it out and says, you write like you write like the 1940s. You write like His Girl Friday, basically. Um, so yeah, all right. All we're saying is that yes, there's a weird thing with time going on in this film, and or it's a weird thing of making you think of earlier eras, but it's on purpose.
But I actually wonder if that partly isn't. Okay, given what Drew was saying, if her character doesn't somehow evolve, or if it's symbolic of her evolution, that later she doesn't have that look anymore. When she's just kind of out, like that's her professional look, and then when she's just dealing with this whole haunted house thing, she loses a lot. Like the makeup is a lot more natural, and the hair is more natural, and it could just be that that's just, she just didn't feel like.
I mean, I think they were kind of trying to show that she was perhaps a bit more distressed and maybe not as put together. But I mean, she still has like her little sweater and her full skirt and everything.
Right.
Like she's her high heels and everything. Like she still looks pretty vintage. It's just her makeup and hair isn't quite as today. And it's worth noting she has a car from like the early 60s.
I feel guilty that we haven't mentioned that the character of Julia is a newspaper reporter. This is how the story is starting. I mentioned that we open with a thing that feels very 40s, but actually plot-wise, she is in fact a reporter. She is a real estate reporter, and she's played by Jessica Lowndes of 90210. And it was really cool to see Jessica Lowndes. She's been in a number of films. This is the first thing I've seen her in. Oh wait, no. There was the movie. There was a film where she is a con artist who tricks Will Ferrell into allowing her to be a surrogate or something like that. It was it was A Deadly Adoption. It was a Lifetime movie, and it was genius. So she is pretty good.
Wait. This actress was on 90210. She looks so young.
Not the original 90210.
Okay.
The reboot 90210 from.
Well, pardon my ignorance of the second incarnation of 90210. I did.
No, it's quite all right. I mean, sad to say, I know my way around soap operas, and yes, we watched a lot of the.
That's why we keep you around.
I keep him around to catch mice and bugs.
Yep.
Mostly.
Now I'm just going to start picturing him as Renfield.
I love that in the last episode of our show.
Eat them. That I know of.
The last episode of our show, we're actually literally talking about a Hammer Frankenstein film, and Joya interrupts the proceedings to let us know that a mouse has run across the floor.
It was quite alarming. I would have not been able to pretend that didn't happen.
All right. So what's going on here is Joya is researching a number of recent sales in real estate. She wishes she had something involving murder, but she doesn't have it just yet. And she goes and visits with her sister to complain about whatever it is that she's going to complain about. And that very evening, her sister and their family is slaughtered. And this play is really scary. I mean, because we see the intruder actually sneak into the house just around them, around the adults when they're talking uh, through the uh, just through their dinner. We see the intruder sneak upstairs where he'll wait and then kill them afterwards.
The whole thing of him sneaking in was so clever and terrifying. You know that the family's just kind of around. The little boys upstairs sleeping, and the women are in the kitchen, and the dad just stopped. The women being Julia and her sister, and the dad just kind of walks outside to do whatever trash or something,
Right.
and the guy just slips in behind him into the unlocked door and sneaks upstairs without anybody noticing. It's terrifying. It's terrifying for anybody, but especially like parents, who are thinking, "Oh my God, I can't imagine." So that was really good, and then the murder that is off screen, and so that was, thankfully that one's off screen. There's other murders, plenty of murders that are not off screen, but it was really horrific. It was really terrifying.
This movie handles gore really well, I feel like. I feel like there is a lot of blood in the film, but to be honest, this is not a very gory film. It's
the one guy who's like bashing his wife in whatever is like, that was pretty. Ugh. Anyway.
Yeah, right. He bashes her head in, but actually, I've seen a lot more bash your head bashing than that. That was,
Yeah, okay. Like I said, it
that
could
was.
be
worse. It's nothing compared to The Walking Dead.
Right.
Yeah, I don't
exactly.
watch, and I won't
Might be the
watch
grand champ of head bashing right now.
Right. So I mean,
I watched The Walking Dead partly because I never was interested in it, and partly because I would way rather remember what's his name, Jeffrey Dean Morgan is his name, yeah, as
Yes.
Denny from Grey's Anatomy than as some horrible brutal murderer. But whatever.
Yep. Or the comedian. Yes. So this murder takes
when you factor that in, he's actually been several brutal murderers at that point.
A good point. That's a totally good point. But
He's
anyway,
also been several romantic leads, so I'm happy to remember him that way.
there is the moment also I should mention around here where when she goes to investigate, she goes to talk to a real estate developer. And well, I don't want to. I want to go back for a moment, but I just want to mention this while it's in my head. There's a moment where a real estate developer is telling her about a crime that took place in a house. It's the one with the guy who bashed his wife's head in, and the way that is staged is very clever. I mean, it was very neat. Instead of having like uh, quick cuts between the real estate developer telling the story, cutting to the crime taking place in an apartment. Instead, Joya and the real estate developer are sitting in the real estate agent's office, and suddenly they're standing in a space. They're standing in the apartment, and the crime is going on around them, and that was really neat. I thought that was cool. And when you think about it, it's not confusing. There's no reason not to do that, and yet I have to say that technique does not get used a great deal. So that was
I
neat.
love that. I thought that the director and the cinematographer showed a lot of talent in the way that was showcased. It was, when I talk about like ghost movies being tired, a lot of it is just like sort of the style of ghost movies, and just little things like that made this a little bit more visually interesting than like a lot of the other movies in this genre that have come out in the last few years.
It's a really good point because they're making choices along the way. We've listed a couple of things in the first half of the film that are more creative than you might expect this story to be, as far as the presentation goes. The mystery occurs because her family is killed, and that's horrible. But and they've arrested the guy. The guy will not reveal very much about why he committed these murders, other than supposedly that he had to. She starts looking into it, and one thing that happens right away is that somebody has bought her sister's house, and here we get to the hook of the film. Somebody's bought her sister's house and literally removed the bedroom where the murders took place. Just completely removed the boards, so that they can take them somewhere else. And she finds out that this has happened in a number of places where a violent crime has taken place in the house, and somebody has gone in and removed the structure where the crimes took place. And it's
It,
so interesting, by the way, that this is the kind of thing that she is specially capable of investigating because she is a real estate reporter. That is so clever, you know? She's a real estate. Yeah, go ahead.
well, speaking of that, I love the scene where she grills the realtor. Like
Yeah,
it looks, the way it's filmed, it looks very much like a gangster movie. Like even the way he's styled, and you talk about the style of the movie and how it's got this sort of mixed time period thing. Like the way his hair is done, because he's got this very tight ponytail, but when he's sitting down in his desk, it just looks like he has slick back hair and he has a suit on. And then when he
yeah,
stands up, he's got this ponytail, which instantly brings it into being more contemporary.
yeah,
And I love that. And I also just love, again, here is this 90-pound slip of a girl grilling this big guy. Like it is. I loved that scene. Like it may have been I don't know if it was my favorite scene in the movie, but it was definitely in there. Like I liked that bit quite a bit, and it was also important because it's where they reveal the name also of the guy that's buying it, because it's on the business card.
yes, that's right. That's right. They find the name of this really bizarre person, Mr. Crone, I think it is. Let me find
Jebediah Crone.
Jebediah Crone, who has been buying up houses, and the name Jebediah Crone takes her back to a town called New English, which she notes is also the town that she was born in. And it's the town where a number of seedy details in this mystery are linked back to. So she heads back to the shivery little dusky town of New English that looks so deserted. The sheriff says
Actually, you're
basically that.
skipping over her going to visit the murderer in prison.
Oh, that's right. I absolutely did. I'm so sorry. Yeah, she goes to visit the murder of her sister, in the murder of her sister and her nephew and brother-in-law in prison. And I'm trying to remember what he actually reveals. I'm so struck by
Well,
the
he says
violence of
he
that
says
scene.
that he says I think the most important bit of dialogue in that whole scene is he says, "I found a room that he can't take out," which means
Uh,
he can't remove it. And then he starts trying
yeah.
to bash his own skull in. And with, like Julia talking about the violence in the movie, I honestly had the hardest time with him smashing his head against the bars, I think, than any
Yeah.
other bit of violence in
So
the movie. That
here, yeah, it was gruesome. My question is, why did he? And this is for Drew. Why did he murder them? Like, what is it that happens to him? I mean, is he one of the townspeople? Because I know
he
we're
was
going to
one
get
of the
to this in a minute.
townspeople, and he's one of the townspeople. And as they show later, they're all kind of in this cult led by
Right.
Crone.
But he doesn't seem to be okay with doing this. Like, he seems to be really
No,
grief.
he's very remorseful.
Yeah. So that's why
Yeah.
I don't know.
baffled.
Maybe
Everybody else seems to be perfectly cool with the whole murdering thing.
Maybe, because he actually went in and physically killed them. Maybe he was actually struck by the horror of what he had done
Maybe.
afterward. Because maybe he was all in, and then like after, killing an entire family, after his adrenaline went down. Because he actually, he seems insane, but when you think about what happens by the end of the movie, he's not actually insane.
Yeah. He's just part of a crime, a very
he's just
interesting
part of it.
crime.
I think he has actually just been kind of now that he's away from the influence of the town, and he's left to more of his own thoughts. I think he is just sort of overwhelmed with what he's actually been doing and what he did, and I think that's why he tries to kill himself in this very horrific way. which I guess maybe is insane because I can't imagine a sane person doing
Well,
that.
no, they're all insane. It's just that they've been driven insane by the brainwashing of this Jebediah, this this cult leader. So yeah, I mean so we can I guess catch up to that now. So they go out to the town. Unless there was something else you wanted to say, Jason, about
No. They go out to the little town of New English, and they very
and so
quickly
this
find out.
sheriff guy pulls them over.
Yeah, well, I mean, and what he says
That
is
was my favorite. That was my favorite scene in the whole movie. The first
Yeah,
sheriff is a
and
well-drawn character. Yeah,
Yeah.
the sheriff is absolutely a fantastic character because in a way, I mean, he's unfriendly, but he's also very helpful. He goes, to the extent that that I'm unfriendly, um, take it for hospitality because the people around here are even less friendly than I am, basically. And
Well, I
he's
love the whole bit of her like getting out of the car
yeah.
and like walking over to him, and then he says, "Well, would you care to sit in our well-informed or lounge?" And
Yeah.
like open up the back. I love, like that is very Thin Man. You name
Yes.
dropped the Thin Man earlier, and that is very Thin Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty great that she gets pulled over and then she walks back to his car.
Oh yeah,
that was pretty
She's
funny.
acting like it's really cool. Like, think how cool, how much you would like this person if you really knew her,
Yeah.
because she is
Definitely feminist.
working as a reporter. She writes about real estate. That's not so great, but she really goes for it. She really is like, I'm a reporter, like in the 40s, and I'm gonna like sling whiskey and talk real fast and like cozy up to cops and all that stuff. I mean, I love the fact that she takes this stuff so seriously. No, that is pretty awesome. Anyway, the sheriff is like, okay, this place is a ghost town. Nobody can afford to leave. Everybody's still in their houses. Nothing is for sale, and there's nothing to see here. This is a ghost town with people in it, which is a wonderful, wonderful like foreshadowing. And so he says, so you best just sort of get out of town. But
Well, the
she
interesting
very
thing is he says nobody
Yeah.
sells anything, nobody buys anything because everybody leaves stuff to the next generation. But what we find out is that there is no next generation of this town because
Yeah.
they've gotten rid of it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything that we need to say between what you're talking about now and that revelation.
No, he
but
says it right
all
then.
of the-
Oh,
all
I
of
see.
the
I see what you mean.
children-
Yeah.
All of the children died in a fire at the school, except for these two girls, these two sisters, who their dad took them out before the fire happened. They took them out of the town. So you can talk about that and why.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to figure out the best way to make our way through the mystery, and maybe it wouldn't be wise to go ahead and go beat for beat, because even though we say that we're a spoiler show, the fact of the matter is, it's probably not fair to just sort of walk through everything. We should talk just in large segments. She starts investigating this town, and the first thing we notice is that everybody that she does come into contact with is deeply, deeply unfriendly to her. The sheriff is at least a little friendly to her, and he seems to be kind of doing her a favor already when he says, "You need to just leave. This is not a very friendly place." And, the woman at the Hall of Records where she goes investigating is way worse. I mean, 1,000, that lady is like actually her means of being difficult to work with is just that she acts like a normal civil servant and says we're about to close and no, I won't help you. And then we get to a long sequence which is really kind of cool, where Jessica Lowndes comes to the home of this lovely woman who has this completely enormous sort of, I don't even know what you'd call it. Like it's a kind of, it's almost on the inside it seems like an antebellum mansion. The character of Allie basically is played by Lynn Shay, and she is one of the older ladies of the town. She's actually not that old, but she's old enough to be Jessica Lowndes' mother, which turns out to be to be something that will be revealed later. But she is a completely nutso crazy person. It is a wonderful character. I mean, I
She is.
really
It's
enjoy it.
also too important to point out that she is also got like kind of styled like out of a different time period. She's got a very 1950s hairdo with like the
Yeah.
bright red lipstick and everything.
No, she's a great kind of crazy. She's like, you know, you better get out of here right now. You better go. And so then Julia's like, no, I'm not leaving. I've come all this way, and I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here overnight. So she goes, suddenly changes. She goes, you're the first new thing I've seen, or you're the last new thing I'll probably ever see. So go ahead and stay in my house. So she brings her outside this bizarro house. The house is kind of strange. It feels to me like a Alice in Wonderland kind of thing, because I felt like the entrance hall was way too large. You know, it was just like really high ceilings, and really the furniture felt too large. They felt too small for that space. And then they go into another space or bedroom, and I felt like they were too large for that space. Like it just all seemed kind of weird, which was really interesting. And
And it's
then,
real. I mean, this is definitely a practical house. I mean, that's
it's a regular house, but it's just
I mean,
kind of
it's the
fits with her
outside is definitely.
Yeah.
The outside is definitely like a plantation style.
Right.
You know,
and it probably is a normal house, but it just felt off to me, and I think it just felt like, and maybe they did make the furniture just a little bit too big or just a little too small, or maybe it's just my imagination. But I thought
I think you're absolutely on point. I think that was probably done as a way of making you not quite
feel unsettled.
Comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, so she's very strange, and so then she's being super sweet, but then the detective shows up and she bites his head off. So it's a very strange character. I really enjoyed her. I thought she was delightfully bizarre.
Yeah, she's very strange. So, we follow this character around as she sort of as she makes, she allows Jessica Lowndes to make herself at home, and
she sort of explains the history of the town and how Jebediah Crone sort of came to be the leader of the town.
Yeah, everything. Suddenly we flash back, we hear, oh, well, no, she uses films. She uses 8mm films to show the history of the town, and we find out some amazing stuff, which is that Jebediah Crone, who came out of the Dust Bowl and this, what a wonderful detail that is. The idea of a desert preacher who comes out of the Dust Bowl and takes over the town and begins a cult of blood sacrifice in exchange for healing and, one presumes, immortality of the folks of the town. That's a cool solution, and she reveals it all here. In other words, this movie goes ahead and gives away its secrets. Yes,
no, I didn't.
but he's Jim Jones, but he's beyond that. There's something. This is a really unusual thing. It reminds me of.
Does anybody think of Reverend Kane from the Poltergeist movie?
Yeah, that's what I said. I go, he's Reverend Kane. I was like, you're all gonna die.
No, man.
I mean, Jim Jones made everybody caused everyone to be suicidal. That's not this. This is more like
it's the same weird,
yes,
the same weird cult leader thing that has no respect for life. So yeah, he's got his own ideas of what will basically he's like. It's like a vampire who's living on other people's blood, except he's not. But I mean, it's the same idea of, that's the best example, is that he just has this idea of immortality that involves taking other people's lives.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of how the impression I got.
Except they don't seem to
it was
stay
very
young, because everybody in the town is older. Although they do use a blood sacrifice to heal somebody that couldn't walk.
Supposedly,
yes, they do.
Who knows? It's very strange.
I mean,
who knows what actually was going on there? But it's the whole thing is really weird. And so, like you said, we're not going to spoil every little detail. But I do want to say that she ends up venturing into the woods with the detective, Julia does, and finding this bizarre, it's totally Blair Witch Project. Or what was the other movie that you said, Jason, that it reminded you of with all the hanging things hanging from
Yeah,
the trees.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre has a lot
Yeah.
of like stuff
Oh, like
randomly hanging from the ceiling of the porch. Um, what's odd about this house, and I guess we should save some of that for people to watch without us describing all of it. What's odd about the house is that it is more or less merged with the woods in a very strange way. I mean, such that sometimes it's a house and sometimes it's more like a space. You know,
Oh no, I don't
it's
think
a
it's sometimes a house, sometimes a space. I think that they walk into a space where it's the woods with these sets basically that are made up of some of the murder rooms, and then that's like an outside garden for the house.
Okay,
yeah.
House is its own thing.
the thing is that's going on
Yeah.
is like the entire time they're staying with Allie, they keep hearing this banging. They keep hearing this banging going on, and like at one point the cop goes like, "What the hell is that?" And then they have like the whole scene where townspeople come in and they take Allie away, and then the reporter and the cop are confronted by Jebediah Crone. And actually, that scene's really great because like they're running out to save Allie, and the last thing they think, and he's just right there, and there's all these people out in the woods.
Yeah.
And he explains, haha, well, I haven't actually technically committed any crimes. You've got nothing on me, twirl mustache, ha ha ha. And they all take off into the woods, and then the cops and the reporters start to follow them in there, and they see the stuff you talked about, and there's just these, like, it's just like Julia says, there's just these rooms laid out. And I think the thing is those are rooms that they have not actually added on to the house. That is what the
it's a holding kind of place. No, they look like the rooms that you set up in a furniture store to demonstrate all the furniture. So you've got these little half walls.
I love that.
And and half walls and random props, but it's clearly not part of anything.
It's very clever. I mean, all of that stuff is super clever. And what's really interesting is it's super clever in a way that is going at a completely perpendicular direction from where we were going. Because honestly, the business of the crazy Elmer Gantry gonna lead you into blood sacrifice and heal the sick and live forever stuff, that probably honestly would have been enough without the big strange haunted house. Except for the haunted house is the weird hook, because Crazy Preacher, that's not a particularly weird hook. I'm just saying that it's
there is a lot going on in this movie. The thing that I find fascinating, about the setup though, is the heroes are given every opportunity to leave. And in fact, the cop shows up.
That's right.
I'm giving you every opportunity to leave.
He arrests them. He arrests them, and he says, "Okay, here's your car.
Yep.
We're gonna unhitch it. You can drive on out of town. Don't go back." They knock him out and drive back. He takes them. At this time, he's going to kill them, which he explains is an extraordinary kindness, because they can't build a room out of water. I love that line.
Yeah.
And then he's shot by one of the townspeople, and they wake up in one of these rooms. And then Jebediah Crone actually offers them the chance to leave. So they are literally given every out possible to not end up inside.
But they have to go in the house, and they have to see the house.
Oh no, I know, but like it does make
it is interesting.
It does, and it does some sort of supreme. We talk a lot about horror movie logic on this show. This is like extreme acts of horror movie logic, because I can guarantee you, like, if that cop had given me the chance to drive out of that town, I would have. And like the police officer says, like, well, I can rain hell down on them better without you here. I can bring like a whole bunch of policemen. I can bring the military. He actually says that.
I think that it's more than just curiosity, or more than just. I think she's as compelled to go and find out like more about her sister's family's murder and try to connect with those spirits, she's as compelled to do that as they are to do the things they do. You know what I mean? I think it's all part of this weird curse of the town. And then the detective is just there trying to help her and protect her. But I think she's just drawn into it. She's part of this whole weird curse.
Yeah. Yeah, because we come to find out that, of course, she's a part of this town.
Do you really want to spoil that part?
Okay, you're right. I mean, I've mentioned a little bit. We won't get into all the details.
I think you kind of have to. I think you kind of have to.
Well, I mean, I can say this very short, and we won't go into a lot of the details, but the bottom line is she comes to find out the reason her sister was murdered is because they have both managed to escape. And we mentioned this earlier in our discussion.
They were supposed to be part of the original sacrifice, which was the
original sacrifice
of the town school with the children in it, which was what they used as the town where the school, the ground where the school is burnt, is what they used as the base of which they've built this gigantic house. You know, I wonder if they were inspired by the Winchester Mansion. That is something.
Yeah, it is kind of Winchester Mansion-y.
It has to be. And I have to say, the presentation of the spirits inside that house is a wonderful image. It's really cool. The sort of stylistic way that they choose to show the ghosts over and over again is very clever. And I don't want to like spoil the final section other than to say that it involves exploring this house, but it's really neat. And
it is interesting, and it is definitely very haunted housey. I liked it a lot.
I think my one disappointment in this movie, as much as I liked the mystery aspect of it, is that the house sequence is so short compared to the rest of the movie. I would have loved more once they get to the house, and the house is such a fascinating hook. Like, this is a haunted house made up of pieces of other houses.
A whole bunch of murder rooms, Yeah,
I thought that was a brilliant, and like you said, you almost don't even need the cult. Like, in some ways, I think that would have been better to sort of remove the sort of Texas Chainsaw Massacre town and just focus more on the house. I mean, I think all that stuff's fine. And if they do a sequel to this, you know, maybe that's something they could explore. But I wish we would have had more time to explore the house, because the house was it's so different in its very conception from any other haunted house that I can think of in cinema history. I just would have loved to see that, because, you know, the haunted house genre is so rife with cliches. And
I would have liked to have seen, and maybe you're right that this could be a sequel, I would have liked to have seen what comes of the Jebediah character, because we don't really have his story resolved.
Wait, I didn't really want. Okay.
No, I'm just saying I don't know what happens to him, and so I'm curious.
No,
I was
I know.
curious to see what happens to him next.
He's a good villain. And he's very throwback. It's like easy. It would be easy to see Vincent Price playing this character.
He's a neat actor, by the way. I like his accent. I like, he is, you could see Price play him. I like that this is a very particular, specific actor with a specific accent that is, very cool, very foreign.
Well, the thing, he's a very old-timey horror villain.
Yes.
He's got the cane and the top hat and the suit, and even the name Jebediah Crone, like, it sounds like a villain more from like a Universal movie or even a Roger Corman horror film. Like, it doesn't.
Absolutely.
It doesn't.
Well, he sounds like a Quaker, like a somebody.
Yeah, like he does. It plays well within like the throwback nature of the movie, that you have this character that does seem more like a vintage horror film. Even his whole business with like the cane and everything. Like, I like everything about this guy. And
he has a look.
Definitely,
it's very stylish.
I would love to see more movies with him.
I was going to say he's from Scotland, actually. Technically, he's actually a Scottish actor.
I couldn't quite place the accent. I know at times he was kind of doing a southern accent.
Sometimes it seemed southern. Sometimes it seemed Brooklyn. Didn't
Yeah.
bother me though. He just sounded really foreign to this area,
Well,
and yeah,
he seems not unearthly, so it's kind of
yeah,
okay with the accent
yeah.
being kind of.
I
Well,
like
just
it.
like well, I
Yeah,
kind of wondered if it was on purpose because like the house is made up of different houses, so maybe he's, like I kind of wonder if that was a deliberate choice on behalf of the actor to like kind of shift around his accent on at times. Like I don't know. I like this character. I would love to see more of him. And yeah, like Julia says, like we don't really get to see what his final
yeah.
fate is. So they definitely leave it open
He'll be
to.
back. That's for sure.
And well, I mean,
Absolutely.
look, we're at a point where we need some new horror icons anyway. So
Yeah.
so,
Outstanding. Well, all right. I want to wrap this up with final thoughts on Abattoir and starring Jessica Lowndes from Momentum Pictures. So why don't we go in the same direction that we did go? Did we started with Julia? So Julia, final thoughts, Abattoir.
Well, Drew has helped me to see some things that I've missed, I think. So that's good. So that makes ties it a little bit better together for me. But I mean, like I said, I think I agree with Drew that the haunted house should have been a bigger part of the movie because it's really cool. There's so many neat things, so many neat scenes. I mean, it just reminded me of Haunted Mansion, the ride at Disney World or Disneyland.
Yes.
With just the coolness of the ghosts and all that. I just really liked that a lot. And then I think the bad guy's great. I think the story is interesting. There's a few little things here and there where I was like, I'm not quite. You can kind of put it together, like why this guy killed these people if he's so remorseful about it. Kind of figured out, as he's sort of honor bound by the town, but there's things like that where it was a little puzzling, but it was good. And then there was just a few little things here and there with dialogue that just kind of annoyed me, but otherwise it's interesting. I like the actors. I think that they did a great job, and so it's pretty cool.
Outstanding. Drew, what are your thoughts?
I thought this movie was a very pleasant surprise. Like I get very annoyed with haunted house movies, not because I don't enjoy them, but just because I feel like when a haunted house movie is bad, it's really bad.
Mm.
This movie was a nice surprise. It's a rock solid B movie. It's very entertaining. I was very happy to watch it. I think if I get an opportunity to watch it again anytime soon, I'll probably recommend it to some. Well done. Just a very, very well done movie.
Okay, my final thoughts are I agree. This has been a really fun conversation. Uh, Going over the different pieces of this film, a lot of choices that are made that are considering that this is a B picture, that this is intended for people to go, I'm not looking to watch literally I'm not watching a superhero movie this weekend. I'm going to watch something else. This movie makes a lot of bold choices and a lot of surprising decisions, and like Joya said, the haunted house reminds me a lot of times of Haunted Mansion, which is pretty cool. And over again, there are really wonderful visual presentations. Everything, down to the texture of when she's running through the woods or through tall grass. It's always well presented. So neat stuff from the haunted house just to the texture of the rest of it. Okay, so and I think this might be one of the few times that we've actually done a new movie. We've done it a couple times when movies are coming out, but it was very exciting, and I hope we do more. So why don't we do endorsements? Julia, do you have anything to endorse for us this week?
I'm trying to remember what did we just finish watching? I feel like we just finished watching a series. Westworld was really interesting. Finish watching what they have so far anyway. I'm liking it a lot. I'm looking forward to the next season. It's a really interesting. I didn't like it at first. I was kind of because I have a thing, just like I have a thing about gore. I also have a thing about dirt. I have a thing about dirty, like movies that take place outside in the dirt. So I always have problems with westerns, and I always have problems with gladiator films for that reason. I'm just like, I feel hot. I think it's because I'm from Texas. I just start to feel hot and dirty, and I want to take a shower every tomorrow. So when I first started watching, I was like, it takes place outside and it's dirty. But then it just gets so interesting with the androids and all the bizarre politics and the inner workings of this, Disney-ish bizarro land. So I'm kind of really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to seeing the next season. And it was great. God, great cast. Anthony Hopkins is in it. Tandy Newton. I mean, it's just phenomenal. What's his name that plays Bernard?
Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah, Jeffrey Wright. Yeah, it's really good. Good cast. Great story.
Excellent. Drew, you have anything for us?
Well, about 1,000 miles away from that, I caught over the weekend Batman: The Return of the Caped Crusaders, which is a new animated movie from Warner Brothers, but it's basically a long episode of the Adam West Batman show. It's got Adam West voicing Batman, Burt Ward voicing Robin. It's got Julie Newmar voicing Catwoman, and all the characters are designed to look like the characters from the Batman 66 Batman TV series, and it's written in that style, and it's just a hoot. Like, it's so much fun, and there's so many inside jokes for people who are fans of Batman, and in particular, they find ways to give Adam West a chance to not only have some of Michael Keaton's lines from Batman '89, but also he gets to do some Frank Miller lines as well.
Wow!
So it is a lot of fun. I hope that it does well, so that maybe they can do another one. Burt Ward's voice has not aged a day. Adam West sounds quite a bit older at times,
sure.
But once you can get past that, like, it's just like watching a really long episode of the old Batman TV show.
Outstanding! Wow, thank you. What a great tip. I guess I need to watch this. Okay.
I think you'd get a lot out of it. I think you would enjoy it.
I agree. That you're the first person I've heard describe it, and you said a bunch of things that make me totally intrigued to watch it. The mere inclusion of Burt Ward and Adam West's voices was not enough for me, but the idea that it's done with that kind of an eye towards the Batman culture, that sounds really fascinating, and I gotta check that out. Okay, I got two things to mention in endorsements. One is that Van Williams died I'm not endorsing the death of Van Williams, but I am noting that Van Williams, the actor, died just a few days ago, and he was the star of a couple of TV series in the Warner Brothers detective universe of the early 1960s. Bourbon Street Beat, and then he moved over to Surfside 6, and he was great. And he also played the Green Hornet on Batman 66. How do you like that? We tie it all together.
Yep. Holy tie-ins adjacent.
That's right. Van Williams was a fantastic actor, and I really loved him on Surfside 6. So if you get a chance to watch some episodes of Surfside 6, you can't go wrong. The other thing I want to mention is that there is a Facebook group that I love, because like one of the coolest things I like about Facebook is that if you find like a subject interest group that has constant postings, it just gives you something to look at like throughout the day. And there's this group called TV Terror that is actually put together by Anthony Rotolo, who's a host of another podcast, and people just post all day long cool things related to horror on television all day. And it is so neat because people will be posting like favorite things from the Twilight Zone, brief weird moments from One Step Beyond, oddball, commercials that came around in 1967. you name it. It's really cool. I mean, I think I get more of a kick out of TV terror like every day than any other group, with the possible exception of the completely obsessed fan group of the Ghost and Mrs. Muir. So I my endorsement this week is a page on Facebook, which is TV Terror. Check it out. Uh, that is it for me, and I'll definitely check out the Batman thing. All right, so this episode has been a one-off where we looked at a new film, Abattoir, new from Momentum Pictures and starring Jessica Lowndes, directed by Darren Lynn Bousman. Comes out December 9th, so right around the time that you're probably listening to this episode. Give it a shot. We look forward to hearing from you guys. Leave comments on the Facebook page, leave reviews at iTunes. All of those things matter so much to us, and we can't wait to engage with you. And we will be back with a Christmas episode, and then we will probably take a break for a couple of weeks, and then we'll be back with our brand new crazy, sleazy, sexy vampire retrospective.
We have to say though, your mission as fans, most vampire movies, as we discussed, have sexy female vampires. We are trying to find some with sexy male vampires, so we can have equal opportunity objectification on Castle of Horror.
That's not to say that we won't do the sexy female vampire movies. We're going to do probably more of them.
Recommend on our Facebook group your sexy male vampire movies for Julia's sake.
Right. It's very important to her that we have some.
Otherwise, I'm gonna make it be Twilight, and then we're gonna lose Drew, and that would suck. So.
We wouldn't lose me. We would lose the rest of the cast because I would go berserk.
Yeah.
No, so
all right,
you would actually watch it. See, I'm okay with the idea of you just going crazy. I just don't want you not to come at all to the party.
We actually saw Twilight, Joy. We saw it in the movie theater, if I recall.
No, I know I've seen it. I'm saying I would like to do it for the podcast if Drew were going to participate, but he's so opposed.
Do you want me to murder people? Because I think that's what would happen if I ever had to watch.
No, I don't want that.
I've seen that movie once, and that was one that really. I'm usually, my rule of thumb with movies is I will give every movie a chance, and I will watch it twice. Twilight is one of those few movies where it's like, okay, and I don't need to give this a second chance.
I think it would be. I'm not saying we should do Twilight, but I do think it would be interesting to discuss it from the perspective of what it brings to the vampire myth. But we can probably live without it.
I'm not knocking people for liking it. I'm just saying, no, thank you.
But Christmas episode is coming up very soon. We'll let you know how it goes.
About that one.
Yeah. All right, guys. Have a fantastic week. We will be back next week. Don't do anything we wouldn't do, and we look forward to seeing you on the page.
Be good, for goodness sake.
Bye.
Whoa.
Night, everybody.
Night.